So, my name is Shaylin Hayes-Raymond, and I am the author of Misophonia Matters, which came out today. And I'm very excited that this book came out today, mostly because it took a long time. And when you're in the writing stages, it can be really
Mostly
hard.
because it took a long time
Oh,
and
sorry, I had the My apologies. The stream just went a little weird. My computer decided it was going to close the tab. So, again, I'm sorry. So, I guess, kind of to start, I want to say why I wrote this book. And it's kind of a hard thing to explain because obviously people write books for many different reasons. And for me, the main part of writing this book was just getting all my thoughts down on paper because I had so many thoughts over the years about misophonia. And as an advocate for years, I talked to a lot of people in the community about misophonia. And, I learned a lot along the way. So I didn't want this just to be my opinion of misophonia. I wanted it to kind of encapsulate other people's opinions. And I wanted, of course, to look at research and what the research on the disorder was saying, because I do think that it's very important that we have an approach to misophonia that has the sufferers in mind, the people with it, and the research, and we put that together and we get a way to cope that encapsulates us all. So, the heart of this book is really about coping with misophonia, but it's from an advocacy based approach because I did eventually become a clinician and I'm in the final stages of becoming a clinician. I will be graduating in April with a master's in counseling. But I really did all that because of misophonia, because of this disorder, because of how it felt. And really, this book puts a lot of that together: the counseling side, the advocacy side. Advocacy for misophonia can sound like a scary thing and a scary word, but what advocacy can really entail is something as simple as saying, you know, I can't be in a room with whistling or chewing, and then negotiating with the people around you in order to get better care for yourself. And then each person that tells others about misophonia will then learn more. And then as we grow, we get more and more involved. So I'm really excited for this book to come out, especially because you know, it took some time and it comes from my heart and my own feelings of coping with misophonia. And it is available on all platforms. You can find it pretty much at every major web store. So it should be pretty accessible. The International Misophonia Foundation will also be selling the book. So if you want to support the foundation, you can do that too. So there is a giveaway. I will be giving away a few copies and I'll be doing the raffle shortly. So if you haven't signed up for the raffle yet, you can do so now. And if you want to sign up for the raffle, make sure you go to the Misophonia International website and you should see the digital launch party on the main page. And on that page, you'll be able to enter the giveaway to get a copy of the book. So if you haven't yet, I'll give you some time. That way we can kind of let everybody have a chance to join if they haven't. Let me see. I did put the link in the YouTube chat, so if you're watching on YouTube, you should be able to see that. So YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch, if you're watching from any of those, I have put the link in the chat if you would like to enter the giveaway. And I was going to read an excerpt of the book. And before I do that, I really want to acknowledge and thank the people that helped make this book possible. And that is my mom and dad, Roderick and Michelle Hayes. They have obviously been there my entire life, and I am eternally grateful for their support. I also want to thank Susan Nesbitt, who really went above and beyond by allowing me to publish her information on sensory processing and sensory integration for the book. That was a piece that I felt needed another perspective. And Susan is truly astounding. So to get it from the horse's mouth basically was fantastic, because I don't think I could have written that chapter in a way that would have held up to her fantastic writing as an occupational therapist. And I also want to thank Dr. Jennifer Jo Brout for, being at my side for so many years, for helping me grow Misophonia International, for helping me as an advocate, for encouraging my writing, and for always being there whether we are still, actively working on projects or not. I am so thankful and so grateful for everything you've done. And I want to thank my husband, Preston Raymond, who is an absolute gem. He is so patient. He is so kind. He is the reason I can even do as much advocacy work as I can, because he makes sure that we are taken care of. And honestly, I'm so blessed to have such a wonderful support system. And I'd also like to thank Tanya Curtis for her review of my old book, Full of Sound and Fury, and for her support throughout this writing process. I truly think that your misophonia story is one that's important, and I'm so thankful that I've been part of your story as well. So for Misophonia Matters, I actually do not have a physical copy myself yet, because the release date of March 1st was even for myself. I tried to order copies beforehand and it wouldn't even let me get author copies. So those will be coming within the next few weeks. But the book is now available for order in both print and ebook. Hardcover is coming within the following week, if that's something you would prefer. I also have some really exciting news about the book. There will be an audiobook. It is in the early stages of production, so I'm thinking a month or two for that, depending on how production goes. But there will be an audiobook for Misophonia Matters for those of you that prefer an audiobook. There will also be classes in the upcoming future based on Misophonia Matters. Whether these classes are digital and you watch them like on your own time, or if they'll be live, I've not decided yet. I might do a blend, I might do some, but there's still time for all of that. So I feel like I've been just ranting. If you want to ask a question, you can put questions in the comments. Those should show up. And I am also sending the link to where the book can be bought. And that's kind of a master link, and it'll take you to and see any retailer for print or web. So as I said before, if there are questions, if you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, you can write them in the comments and I will be able to see them. So I am going to read an excerpt of the book and I hope you like it. As I said, I'll be reading off my computer from my digital copy as soon as I open it. Sorry, just 1 second. I'm just grabbing the file. And I will say that the digital edition of Misophonia Matters, if you purchase from the International Misophonia Foundation, there is no DRM on that page. It can be downloaded in Mobi, in EPUB, or PDF. They all come together. If you buy one, you get them all. And this edition, unlike the one on Amazon and the one, on Kobo and all of these, there is a different copyright. Where this is different is if you are a clinician, there is a copyright on the Misophonia Foundation version where you may freely share this with your clients without breaking copyright law. This was something that was very important to me. I wanted clinicians to be able to share this book without feeling bad because I don't want people to not get the book because they would have to, legally have multiple copies for multiple clients. If you are a clinician, a psychologist, a psychiatrist, a social worker, a counselor, a youth advocate, if you buy the digital version of this book, you are free to share it with all of your clients and anyone who works at your practice. So I sent the link in the chat to that version. And I really want to mention that please do share it with these people. And I have no problem with you sharing the Kobo versions or the Amazon version, but Amazon itself makes it very hard to do. And if you did buy the book on another platform or a print book, you can email me and I will send you the DRM free version if you would like that as well. And no extra cost. I will just send you that if you send me proof of purchase. So, Misophonia Matters, an advocacy-based approach to coping with misophonia for adults, teens, and clinicians, by Shaylin Hayes-Raymond. And I want to add a special thank you to Harrison Porter for editing this book. Hopefully, it wasn't too bad. I know it can be hard to read about misophonia. So for the first, after the dedication, I have a lyric from a song that I really love. And the lyric is, "Don't want no penthouse, bathtub, streetcars, taxis, noise in my ear. So no matter how they coax him, I'll stay right here." And that's from Civilization Bongo 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 by the Andrews Sisters and Danny Kaye. And I really love that song because it shows even years ago, people didn't like these sounds and they wanted them to go away. So I am going to read the introduction as part of this cast. And like I said, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments or you can email me after. I'm going to begin now, and this is introduction, and it is page 11. At 19 years old, I lost my ability to fully take part in the world around me. Unlike common sensory impairments, I did not lose my ability to hear, smell, or see. Instead, I suffer from a condition that amplifies each of these. When I touch, when I look, I am feeling everything around me, and it does not feel pleasant. Imagine you are trapped with the same sound for hours. A slow torture will begin to encapsulate your body. For sufferers of misophonia, a strange yet real condition, this torture is immediate. From the drop of a fork or the slight pitch of a whistle, we are derailed. Those who have not heard of misophonia are often surprised by the condition. Some are perplexed by its nature and have trouble believing that it is more than an annoyance. For sufferers of misophonia, we are confronted with an immediate fight-flight response to otherwise normal sounds and visuals. When I first discovered my condition, I went through many emotions. The first was relief that I was not crazy. This was quickly followed by dismay. While I did have a name for the disorder, there was no cure. Soon, my dismay turned to frustration. Information on the disorder, when available, was often wrong or even blatantly manipulative. Charlatans were capitalizing off Google, Wikipedia, and the editors at sites as big as WebMD were not paying attention to scientists. I spent the first year of this disorder wondering what would come of everything. If there was no cure and no one was paying attention, I did not know how I was supposed to keep going. Advocating for an unknown condition is multifaceted. For some, my story has become a beacon, and my efforts are a force to be reckoned with. To many, I've become a symbol of hope. I often feel shame when I sit in my worst moments, void of promise and inspiration. While others look up to me, I spend many moments lost in my own dreariness. The truth is that I am uncomfortable with any idolization for my actions. I am an advocate not for notoriety, but for the ultimate end goal. I am an advocate because I hope for a world in which people like me can walk freely on the streets or have dinner in a restaurant. While stigma is still a problem for many disorders, I have never had as hard a time as I do with my disorder that is completely unknown. If I must explain ADHD, anxiety, or depression to others, I can point them to research studies, to evidence and proof that these disorders are real. For misophonia, these studies are happening, but at a slow pace. And while there is no treatment, research has accumulated in the last 6 years. I do not mind being an advocate for my disorder. It is invigorating to know that my day-to-day work may have an impact on my own life and that of current and future sufferers. However, that does not mean I am not tired. I am tired of typing and saying the same sentences over and over. I am tired of having to justify my disorder whenever I meet a new person. I am tired of explaining why I cannot go to restaurants or why jingling keys, tapping hands, or whistling turn me into a nightmare, crying and all. When I first discovered what misophonia was, I had an entirely different story to tell. I was relieved that there was a name. I was also scared that I had a disorder that seemed to be under-researched and would be at risk of being stigmatized. Most people that I have talked to with misophonia have been suffering since they were children. However, I'm one of the late bloomers. Regardless of when it came to be, misophonia is an extremely isolating disorder. I was 16 when I showed my first symptoms, but they were not strong. It was not until 19 when the full force of misophonia hit me like a freight train. Since then, I felt its wrath clasp around my throat, taking over several aspects of my life. My first blog post on misophonia was written before I even knew there was a name, before I had anything to go on. I remember writing in frustration, tears not far off, as I wondered why was I so messed up? Why, all of a sudden, I was having so much trouble with sights and sounds. When I first came across misophonia, I described it as ruining my life. I did not understand why, but these everyday movements and sounds were turning normal situations into a terrible prison. I attributed my first triggers to an anxiety disorder as well as major depressive disorder. Small movements or rocking back and forth were enough to cause near panic attacks. If a desk was not sitting on the floor properly, I would lose it. If a classmate was making loud, distracting noises, I would complain to the teacher. It did not always get me far, but if they did not help, I would leave. I was not the most attentive student in high school. On January 27th of 2014, I wrote a blog post expressing my confusion and rage regarding what I now know as misophonia. Please bear in mind that this was written before I had any idea about misophonia. The title was, I Do Not Know What to Do. It is recopied in full. So now we are reading the blog post from 2014. When I first came to university, I did not remember why I had been so distracted and annoyed in life. Homework is not hard. The reading is fine. What I cannot deal with is the burden that my anxiety can be in a normal classroom environment. Half the time I have a scowl on my face and probably come off as a bit of a condescending witch. Whenever people whistle, click their pen, or shake their legs, it is extremely distracting for me, and for a reason I cannot explain, it sends me into a horrible state. Leg twitching in my peripheral vision has literally brought me to tears. I am so frustrated that I cannot just get over it. I understand restless leg syndrome is a real thing, but so is the anxiety that I suffer every time I enter a classroom. I understand that it would be rude to approach somebody and ask them to please stop torturing me. Instead, I often stew and try not to get upset. But instead, I usually just end up irrationally angry. Oftentimes, I can feel the vibrations on the floor from people shaking behind me, even if they are far away. A couple of weeks ago, I started hyperventilating when somebody was whistling. Why? The sharp noise was so unbearable to me. I honestly do not know what I am supposed to do about this. Breathing exercise, telling myself it is out of my control, and thinking positive are hopeless. I do not want to constantly glare at my friends like they are the worst thing in the world just because they're shaking their feet. I am actually sorry it bugs me this much, but I cannot stop. Sometimes I find myself sitting in my room anxious about going to class just because of my triggers. I just feel alone in this, and that I must sound ridiculous to others. Aside from hiding in my room wearing earplugs and only ever communicating via Skype, I'm unsure of a fix to this. And that is the end of the blog post, and we're back to the regular paragraph. My first real trigger was whistling. I would go into a rage and nearly cry whenever I faced it. Some people would whistle on purpose because they didn't understand the severity of my reaction. I remember being upset for hours after this would happen, and that confused me significantly. Then, one day, my mother's foot shaking really started to bother me. Soon after, the sound of singing and country music really sent me over the edge. This caused many fights and much confusion. Why was I so intolerant? It made no sense to me. While there are many common triggers that seem to arise in numerous people, not everybody has the same triggers. We are not all the same, so that makes it even harder to raise awareness. However, regardless of what a person is triggered by, we are still triggered, and it can be very disorienting. It's hard for me not to think of William Shakespeare's quote, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This quote perfectly expresses the disorder, and that is why it has been incorporated into the title of my first book. There is no logical reason to freak out. We can feel crazy, guilty, and downright ridiculous. It is full of fury. The simple clicking of a pen can feel like we are trapped in a cavern with a jackhammer. Melodrama aside, I believe that a good life is possible with misophonia, and even more possible with the right coping skills. I am no longer afraid of misophonia, and I truly believe that there is much hope to be had. The International Misophonia Foundation is a project that is of great importance to me, Shaylin Hayes-Raymond. As the co-founder of Misophonia International and the remaining owner, I had questions about where my journey was going to lead following the 8 years of advocacy. I feel as though Misophonia International has provided valuable information over the past decade, and I am proud of the classes that I took part in running with misophonia education. Yet, I felt as though there was something more that could be achieved. As somebody who has misophonia, who has written about it, and who has dedicated all their time to the disorder, I knew there had to be something big for the next step. Thus, the International Misophonia Foundation was formed alongside a wonderful initial board of directors. We are still in the processes of beginning, but I'm so happy to be on this journey. Over the past 2 years, I've been working on a counseling degree, and as I near the finish line on this project, I'm happy that my work starting a nonprofit is going to coincide with these clinical interests. I know that there's a long road ahead, but I am excited for what is to come. A main reason for my interest in creating the IMF is to have an organization that is conducting research and surveying people who actually have misophonia. All too often, researchers do their initial research and forget to ask those who have the disorder. My goal for the IMF is to put people and families of those with misophonia ahead of all other goals, whether that is academic or clinical. We, the people with misophonia, should be front and center in alleviating our own suffering. So, does anybody have any questions that they want to type in the comments? If not, that's totally okay, but I'm happy to answer them. I should be able to read them in the chat. And we do have a giveaway, and I'm not sure how many people have entered yet, but I am going to post the link one more time to give you a few more minutes to enter the giveaway before we actually draw a winner. Hi, Mom. I'm sorry I mentioned your leg shaking and country music singing. My apologies. So I posted the link to the giveaway in the chat again if you would like to do that, and it's for a digital copy of the book that will be DRM free. And if you don't know what DRM means, that's basically the stuff that stops you from copying and pasting it to other devices. So I do want to say for the book, kind of go over, the basics of what else you'll find in there. There are several parts to the book, and each focuses on something a little different. Let me see. So part 1 is psychoeducation, and that is, learning about misophonia, learning about the science that exists, why we are this way. Part 2 is advocacy and explaining, and this really gets into ways to discuss with others that you have misophonia, teaching those around you that you have the disorder and it's real, having those conversations without them becoming fights. Part 3 is accommodations and negotiations, and these negotiations can be as simple as learning together what things you can and can't do. So say you have a couple and one loves movie theaters and the other hates it. Maybe you come to a compromise that you find a drive-in theater and then you're both getting that experience. So these negotiations are obviously complex and based on different couples or families or schools. But it's really about getting to the heart of the accommodation, why it exists, but also matching what the other person needs and finding a baseline that everyone can be comfortable with. Part 4 is sensory-based strategies, and this is based on occupational therapy, and this is where Susan Nesbitt shined so brightly and offered such great expertise in her 2 chapters. I am so honored that she allowed to be in this book. And part 5 is cognitive and psychological strategies, and most of these deal with the misophonic moment after. So not sitting there worrying about the next time you're triggered, thinking that you're weird, that your life is ruined because you have it. It's learning to cope with the fact that you have misophonia. these cognitive and psychological strategies are not to fix misophonia. It's not to treat it. It's to cope with the fact that you have it. And I guess the approach is just kind of dynamic based on advocacy and the person. And I see Sis asked a question. Did you have this when you were at a younger age? No. I only started to notice misophonia when I was about 16 to 18. And I think like it got really, really bad 18, 19. When I was a kid, I was actually the opposite. Like, you could have taken me anywhere in the world. I wouldn't have cared. I was oblivious. Like, when I was, I think, 4 years old, I was singing on tables at Tim Hortons for fun, and I noticed nothing. And I see Rod said that country music's a huge trigger for him, and that he wonders if it's the frequency. I think sometimes, there's a lot of guitar that can be kind of rattly or screechy, but also a lot of country songs have whistling in them, which I really, really hate. Or some will even have like a beat that kind of sounds like whistling, even though it isn't, but it's just close enough. Like that new Beyonce song that came out, Texas Hold'em. Don't listen if you have misophonia. There's a lot of whistling. Also, it's not that good of a song in my opinion, but yeah, so if anyone has any other questions, feel free to post them. I'm just waiting to see if anyone has questions. And I'm going to look at the giveaway too to see if we've got entries. Yeah, we've got quite a few here. And this video should be available afterwards. And if you didn't watch live, I want to say thank you for watching, both live and in the video. And I will say I'm very excited to put this book out. I did have another book on misophonia in the past. This was the 3rd edition that came out in 2021. But Misophonia Matters feels more kind of a continuation of the thoughts of this, but I've learned so much in the past 2 years as a counselor that have really kind of reshaped how I've thought. It hasn't like been completely like, oh, misophonia is something different. It's more, I've learned that there are ways to cope. There are ways to live with this. It's still going to suck. A trigger is still going to be a trigger, but you can have a meaningful life even with this horrible disorder and these triggers. So I think a huge point I want to make is kind of like hope through advocacy. And I mean, our voices are loud. You should always speak up for yourself if you can. It's totally okay to go to doctor's appointments or schools with a long note explaining to them with misophonia, like what it is. And I think it's good because each one of us has the power to change how people see misophonia. And I think that can be very powerful. And, even 10 years ago, there was way less press about this. So I think, things are getting better. And I think they will just continue to get better, especially as research is done. And hopefully through the International Misophonia Foundation, I can get some research done myself, because there's definitely some questions that I think need to be asked. So I will do the giveaway now, and I'll reach out via email to the person who wins afterward. All right, I'm choosing 2 winners. And the first is Patricia Schwartz, and the second is Penny. There's no last name there. Oh, Penny Joshua, I think. Well, either way, both of these people, I will email you the book, and I hope you like it. Congratulations on winning the raffle. I just kind of click a button and then the computer tells me who won. So it's very random. So if anyone has any questions, you can ask them now, and we will finish up after some questions. Right, I'm not seeing any questions come up in the chat, so I am going to end the stream. I hope you enjoyed this. If you are interested in buying the book, you can find the link at Misophonia International, and splattered all over the pages, I just posted it again right there into your comments. This video will be live, and if you do have any questions after, feel free to reach out and ask me. I hope you have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend, and I am going to pop some champagne and have some sushi and celebrate the fact that this book is actually out there in the world.